staying healthy, staying happy as family, and Saadia Yunus is going to be my guest. She is going to join from New York. She said she's going to be late a little bit, but I think she is here. So I'll invite Saadia. Okay. Thank you for joining, by the way. Hi.
Hello. Hi. How are
Thank you.
you?
I'm good. Thank you for being on time because you said I'm going to be late a
I
little
know, I
bit.
thought so. But I was able to rush here and get here on time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for taking your time and joining me as my guest.
Yes, thank you for having me here. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Yeah, me too. So, am I pronouncing your name correct? Is it Saadi?
Sadia.
Sadia, okay.
Yes, yes. And you,
And
how do I
yeah, you can
pronounce it?
call me Elvan.
Elvan. Okay. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
perfect. Thank you. So, you are joining from New York.
Yes, yeah. I live on Long Island, New York.
So, how is everything there?
Everything's okay. I mean, it's a pretty bad area when it comes to coronavirus cases.
Mm-hmm.
So just near me, a town near me, they have over 1,200 cases right
Oh,
now.
wow.
So it's a pretty bad area. We've been home 3 weeks, not going out at all unless, it's grocery shopping basically. So just trying to stay safe. My mother-in-law lives in the house with us and she's almost 70, so we're being extra careful, especially for her.
Yeah, so you are living with your family, with your children, your husband, your mother-in-law.
Yes.
Sounds like a crowded family.
Yes, we have 7 people in the house. So, yeah, I
Oh,
have four
wow.
children. They're 14, 13, 7, and 3. So I got two teens and then a school age and like a little toddler. So they keep me busy, definitely.
Yeah, so Sadia, can you introduce yourself a little bit for those who don't know you?
Sure. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been in private practice. I opened my practice in 2015. So my private practice is in Deer Park, Long Island. I do offer online therapy as well. I have been doing online therapy for years, so this is not something new for me.
Oh,
But right now it's exclusively online. I work with individuals, couples, and families. Have a lot of training in trauma, but definitely focusing in on couples and families. Yeah.
so you are doing a lot of things, but still you are able to take time for me, and I'm re really grateful for doing this.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Tell everybody about you. I know some of my followers are on here as well, so definitely they'd love to hear about you.
yeah, thank you. So I'm from Turkey originally. I've been living in the United States for about 4 years.
Okay.
And now I'm seeing individuals, couples, and families, but I'm not seeing any children, like mostly 14 and above.
Okay.
And I'm trying to specialize on like sex therapy, couples therapy especially. And
Great.
I'm working in private practice in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
It's called Better Being Mainline, and I'm working with two amazing sex and couples therapists. And
Okay.
I'm really grateful that I'm working with two amazing women.
Okay. That's exciting. And you aren't too far from me, Pennsylvania. Do you
Yes,
do
I'm not too far.
online therapy now as well?
Yeah, I just started to do online therapy. I'm still trying to get used to it.
Sure.
Um, yeah, it's like it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's
It's not
different,
like
but
yeah, it's different. It's not like good or bad, but just different. We are trying to adjust
yeah,
like our clients.
absolutely. Yeah, everybody's adjusting to all the changes.
Yeah, by the way, if anyone has a question in Turkish, they can also ask me their question in Turkish and I can translate them for you. Um, does she work with immigrants? Bryn Mawr is close. Yes, I work with immigrants too. I have a lot of clients. They are immigrant.
Yes, and same here. Yeah, definitely. A lot of different backgrounds, cultures, religions.
Hmm.
And, my sister's an immigration attorney. So I'm always, we're always able to kind of refer people back and forth if anyone needs any help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to start to talk about our topic today, family relationships,
Hmm.
family functioning, family dynamics. But when we say family dynamics, maybe for some people, like they even don't know what really it means, like family dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with defining that first. Like, what are family dynamics, do you think?
Sure. And I think as therapists we think of that more so. But right now everybody's with their families at home, and family dynamics is really the way the family functions, you know, how they communicate, how they interact with one another. It's really how they function. And so oftentimes there are issues and communication gaps and relationship, friction. And so that shows up in the family dynamics. So it's important for us as therapists to really help families understand what that is and help them to really navigate and communicate better, relate to one another better, especially now with everybody in the same household together. They're really in each other's faces. So really helping families relate to one another in a better way.
So definitely, family dynamics are changing because there is an external situation that like no one see this is going to happen, and this external situation is affecting our relationships, how we are interacting with one another, and definitely families are getting affected by this, and their dynamics are changing basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They are trying to adapt and find a new way of communicating to tell each other what they are feeling, how they are feeling, what are their needs. So these are all changing their dynamics too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So everybody's learning, like you said, a different way of relating to each other because they may have been really dependent on that routine, you know, like just saying good morning maybe and then heading out to work and then seeing each other late in the evening and then talking about their day, maybe talking about their work or kids coming home and talking about their school. And so now it's like, what do we communicate about when we're in each other's faces and we have, we're doing the same things, or what are we really communicating about? So yeah, it's definitely a different way of relating to each other.
And one person wrote parents dealing with their own parents. Definitely, like there is also, when we talk about families, it's not only like parent-child, there is also the third generation, like parent and their parents, and how the grandparent is communicating with the child. If the grandparent is also at home, like in your case, like to what extent that grandparent is involved in the parenting roles, that's also changing the family dynamic. So it's very complicated, and it has lots of different layers, depends on who are you living with. But there is a fact that this is changing. Our family dynamics are changing due to the current situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So it's really navigating those relationships in a way that works best for the family. So even when there's like a grandparent, parent, and child, now it may take more like extra communication to kind of set those boundaries, to really be able to say like, okay, I know we're all in the same space, but that doesn't mean we're all parents, like the grandparents and the parents. There has to be certain limits or certain boundaries that are okay and things that are not okay, and being comfortable or it requires a bit more communication and a bit more diligence in that area, being able to communicate
Yeah.
what's okay and what's not.
So as I understand you correctly, like you are saying, parents need to clarify those roles. Like these are the roles of grandparents. These are the roles of me and my husband. This is our parenting style. These are our expectations from you as their grandmother, as their grandfather. Like there needs to be this open communication between parents and their parents,
Yes.
um, and
Absolutely.
clarifying the roles and expectations.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I really liked how you said it, like clarifying roles and expectations, because if we don't, then those lines will be blurred, and then there's going to be different types of discipline or different types of expectations that are communicated to the children, and they'll get confused, and it'll kind of be a bit of chaos. So it's
Mm-hmm.
necessary for us to be able to sit down and have that sometimes difficult conversation to make those roles and expectations clear, and obviously like with concern and with tact, being able to say like, you have very important place in this family as a grandparent, but I understand your concern for the child, that they do things a certain way, or that they're disciplined, for example, but I would appreciate if you would respect our way of doing things as parents, and definitely give us your suggestions and your ideas because of your wisdom and that you've done this for so long. But please, respect the way that we're parenting our children. So being able to say it in a respectful, kind, and caring way, but also setting those boundaries.
And these are difficult conversations because you may offend the other person. You may afraid that you are going to offend the other person, especially in some cultures. Like, I don't know how it is in your culture, but in my culture, like in Turkey, we should respect our elderly. Like, we cannot hurt them. We cannot tell them this is not their business. Like, these are very difficult conversations to hold, especially with parents. And I see like lots of parents are struggling to talk to their parents about their roles and expectations. Like, look, mom, I understand your good intentions, but like we do things differently in this house. Like, this is our parenting style, and like these are our expectations from you. Like, this is a very difficult conversation to have. Depends on the culture.
Absolutely. And my culture relates too, originally from Pakistan. It's definitely the South Asian culture, puts a really high emphasis on the elders, and the elders are right no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And you really can't kind of question them. And so it is challenging to have those conversations, but it really depends on what environment you're trying to create in the home. If their input and their impact on the children, it goes aligned with your parenting plan. For example, if you want to be that kind, encouraging, loving parent, and their input goes along with that, then there's no problem. In a lot of ways, it goes along with your parenting plan.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is against it, maybe it's a critical type of parenting or negative or putting them down, then it's really about like, I understand I have to respect my elders, or I want to respect my elders, but it's interfering with the environment that I would like to create in the home. And so no matter how difficult that conversation is, if you want that environment in your home to be positive and encouraging and loving, then that difficult conversation is absolutely necessary.
That needs to be happen, even though it's uncomfortable and difficult. Like that, you cannot avoid that conversation. It is going to happen.
Yes, yes.
And one person wrote, I hope this time helps families strengthen their bonds. And I see this, like, this is another family dynamic that is changing right now. Like, I see lots of families are seeing this as like common enemy that they can fight against it. Like this coronavirus, staying healthy, staying happy. Like, this is our common enemy that we should fight against this as a family. So actually, this brought up lots of families together. Like, they are getting closer to each other.
Right, yeah. Like we're all on the same team, and that's really what we want to be on, or the environment that we want in the home is that togetherness, that cohesiveness, that let's sit down and really discuss how we can tackle this enemy together. And so one of those strategies, like I think somebody asked, what is the topic of this? You and I had discussed to kind of make this a strategies for happy families. And so I think that's one of the very important strategies, is to really sit together as a family and communicate our plan, our goal during this time. And really that being the main one is like that togetherness and cohesiveness
Mhm.
to make sure that we're connected so that we're stronger to fight this enemy that's on the outside.
Yes. So I'm really sorry, I'm very horrible at technology. I don't know how to pin the main topic. So yes, topic is the strengthening, like how strategies to strengthen family relationships during this time. But I
Yes.
don't know how to pin that to
That's
Instagram
okay.
Live.
People will get it as we're discussing the topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another person wrote, when communication to begin with is difficult, it's hard to start with that. Yes, starting is the most difficult part,
Yeah.
but usually you can, like if you are feeling a little bit uncomfortable, when you offer something, you can also ask them to offer something back. So you are gonna feel more balanced. Like if you are pointing out some of the areas that they need to improve, maybe you can ask them like, what are some of the areas that I can improve, mom? Like it's going to make you feel like there is more power balance in the relationship. Like not only it's about your demands from them, but also you are willing to hear their demands from you, and you are willing to negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's working to create more balanced communication.
Yeah, and then being able to say that and to talk about that, like, hey, our communication isn't so great, and I'd like to make it better. So how can we do that together? So sometimes it's really about talking about the elephant in the room, like what we're not talking about. If you're thinking with your spouse or your children or the whole family as a whole, is like our communication isn't great. I'm noticing we're not speaking to each other. I'm noticing like we're snapping at each other, or nobody's really hearing each other. Bring that out to the forefront.
Mhm.
Say, hey, everybody, or if you're speaking specifically to your spouse or to the children, say, I've noticed that our communication isn't so great. We're snapping at each other, we're, being irritated with each other, we're not being kind. So what can we do? Or really just asking first, like, have you noticed that? Take it from a place of curiosity and be like, are you noticing this, what I'm noticing? And they probably are. If you're noticing that it's happening and you aren't really communicating in the best way, they're probably noticing it too. So bringing it out to the forefront, and then problem solving as a family.
Mhm.
What can we do? Okay, we both notice that our communication isn't the best right now. So what can we do to make it better?
I
Let's
mean,
sit
that's a
on,
very
yeah,
important point because, like, what a problem is to you may not be the same problem to them. Like,
yeah.
you may not be on the same page. Maybe they are not even noticing, like, this is a problem, that is something bothering you. So
Hmm.
first, bringing that up, look, this is something that is bothering me. I see this as a problem. Is it the same for you? Like, what are your thoughts about this? Do you see this as a problem? So you can also start from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that can open the lines of communication, because I know somebody said, like, you're not even communicating well in the first place. So how are you going to start to communicate? So that gives you a starting point to really
Mhm.
talk about the communication, or just bringing up, hey, I listened to this Instagram live about communication and how it's important. What can we do to make our communication better? So really
Yeah.
just that can be a good starting point.
Mhm. There was one comment I found it inappropriate. Unfortunately, I'm happily married, um, so I'm eliminating that comment. There's
Okay.
another comment. Some people choose to avoid these conversations because that feels like the best option for personal sense of safety, especially when the strain of the conversation would outweigh the outcome you want. Yes. Like,
Mm,
we usually avoid the conversations because, like, that is uncomfortable. That is difficult to have. But we cannot always talk about the happy moments, things that we like, things that are going to bring joy and happiness. Like, we also need to talk about these difficult conversations, uncomfortable feelings,
yeah.
and take that risk to be vulnerable with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so it's willingness to have that difficult conversation. It's not easy, especially like this person is saying, like it may, put your own safety at risk. It may be a really toxic person. We have toxic family members, and it may be better for you to avoid. But I wonder if it would help this person and those of us who are in this situation, having a toxic family member to kind of deal with. I wonder if it would take, like, it would be a good idea to look inward and to see, or to ask, like, maybe I could approach this person in a different way. The way that you've been approaching them or the way that you've been doing it is not necessarily wrong, but there's always a different way to go about things. Just like Dr. John Gottman, he talks about like the softened startup, right?
Mhm.
Where sometimes we start off with attacking the other person or criticizing the other person, and nobody likes to be criticized or even slightly criticized. But if we soften our startup and we start off with, ourselves, for example, like, I'm feeling this way, or, and again, it takes that vulnerability, and it's not always easy, but being able to just look inward to say, hey, maybe there's another way that I could approach this. And
That
it's not
is a very,
always,
very important topic, yeah.
yeah, it's not always easy to communicate verbally. So even though we're together in the same space, it can be maybe easier to write a letter or to write an email or to text the person, like, I'd really like to talk to you about this, but I'm a little afraid of how it's going to go about. And
Mhm.
so maybe that can be an easier way sometimes of communicating.
Yeah, for those who don't know, this a soft startup, harsh startup. So
Mhm.
Gottman says, as you said, like, by just looking at the first, I think it was first 3 minutes of a conversation, we can guess how the conversation is going to end.
Yes.
So this is really, really important. Like, how are you starting a conversation? So just next time when it's happening, like just pay attention. I suggest that to everyone. How are you opening a conversation? Like, are you like applying harsh startup, like criticizing, blaming, pointing fingers, or even your tone of voice is important. Your like gesture, facial expressions are important, or are you approaching, like you said, like more with curiosity and, hey, I'm trying to understand. Can you help me to understand? There's something bothering me. I feel annoyed. Can you help me to understand? Like these are very soft startups, and it's really helping the other person to feel okay. There is something going on with the person in front of me. I just want to help that person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes, I mean, it's not always easy, but it can help to like reflect inward, right? To see like what is my part in this interaction. Because we know as MFTs, it's not just one person, right, who causes something, but it's two people and what's going on between them. So it helps to look at my part in the interaction and to see what I can do differently or better.
Yeah, nothing happens in isolation, and sometimes we are all maybe projecting our anxiety, our anger, our fear to our family members. Like now, everyone is feeling a little bit tense because we don't know what's happening. The current situation is very anxiety provoking for some people.
Yes.
So we are feeling a little bit like anxious, angry, but there's a possibility that we may be projecting these feelings to whoever close to us.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So there is one comment. Do you want to read that?
It may sound simple, this one? Okay.
Mhm,
It may sound simple, but literally but literally the language you speak makes a difference. A person's emotional vocab may have developed in a different language than their native language. Yes, absolutely. That's a great point. And sometimes it's different languages or different generations, or there's a culture gap that can happen even within families. And then not only literal language, but the emotional vocabulary, right? Being able to express that. And I know that I experience that as a therapist because I may say
mhm.
something and my husband's like, "What? Like what does that even mean?" Or my kids are like, "Okay, explain that." And so it may be explaining a little bit of the vocabulary before you can truly connect. What are your
And
thoughts?
I'm curious, are you and your husband sharing the same culture?
Yes, we are. We're both Pakistani American, so we were born and raised in America, and our parents are from Pakistan. My mother-in-law in the house, she was born and raised in Pakistan. So sometimes that can be that cultural gap, or the
Yeah.
communication doesn't always match up, and so it takes a little bit more communication to get to a better
Mhm.
understanding.
Yeah, I can relate to you. I'm Turkish, my husband is American.
Okay.
So definitely we have this cultural differences in terms of how we express our emotions, which emotional vocabulary we are using.
Hmm.
But we are always curious and asking each other, like, hey, what do you mean? Like, did I understand you correctly?
Hmm.
Like, and I see sometimes in cultures, like asking for help is difficult for some cultures.
Hmm.
Reaching out to others when you are struggling is difficult. It may be challenging for some cultures. So
Yeah.
there are these differences. Like,
Right.
I don't find it difficult to ask for help. Like when I need something, I'm like, hey, can you help me? I'm like, I couldn't figure this out. But for my husband, this is extremely difficult. Like he never asks for help. I
Okay.
don't know if this is like a personal or like cultural, but these are happening. But
Yeah.
like without criticizing each other, just accepting these like maybe this is a cultural difference and we should respect that.
Yeah.
We are completely two different person.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I really like what you said about we say, "Did I understand you correctly?" Because I mean, that's a great tool for different cultures, but it's an amazing tool even for anyone, right? Even similar cultures, especially when it comes to couples relationships, being able to, instead of just assume what the other person meant, really ask and say, "Did I understand you correctly?" Or
Mhm.
is this what you meant? Because there's a lot of assumptions that come to our mind when our family members or spouse or whatever, they communicate something to us. We may immediately assume what they mean, but it could be completely wrong, right? And
Yeah.
so it's being able to say, hey, I think, or I'm hearing this from you. Is that correct? Is that what you really meant? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's I've done like some YouTube videos on it, and I've called it just like the clarifying question, because it really is clarifying if I understood you correctly. So that's a
Yeah,
key.
I'm gonna check out that YouTube that you
Yeah,
have.
yeah,
So
definitely.
clarifying questions are like checking in with your assumptions, right?
Yes, yeah. Checking, testing those assumptions, right? Because the
Mm-hmm.
assumption came to my mind already. Now let me test that. Is that assumption correct? So it's giving the other person, instead of just assuming you're right all the time, right? Whatever comes to our minds, we kind of assume we're right. It's testing that and asking the other person, like, is this what you meant? Or did I understand you correctly? Or, it's giving them the chance to really explain themselves. Because they could say,
Yeah.
no, like, that's not what I meant. And then we'll
Mm-hmm.
understand them better.
There's always a possibility that we may misunderstand each other because we are like we cannot 100% know what the other person is thinking. Like we don't have that special power of mind reading.
Hmm.
Like I see this in Turkish couples, especially sometimes they tell me like, "Oh, if he loves me very so much, if he knows me so good, like he needs to know what I need. Like he needs to know how I feel. I don't need to tell him."
Right.
No, you need to tell him, and he needs to ask you because we don't have the superpower. Like it
Mhm.
doesn't show how well you know your spouse. It doesn't show like how many years you spent together or how much you love each other. Like still,
Right.
you are not the same person.
Yeah.
You are changing every day. The other person is changing every day. Your needs are changing. Your emotions are changing. So you cannot just assume just because I'm with this person like 20 years, I know everything about them. I know what they are thinking. Like
Yes.
we really don't have this superpower.
And sometimes what we do when we expect the other person to know what we're feeling or what we're thinking, we're actually engaging in self-sabotage. So we are sabotaging ourselves because, for example, somebody may be like, I expect him to know, or I expect her to know that I would like a gift, or I would like flowers, or I need an apology, and not even requesting or not even mentioning that and expecting the other person to know, and the other person doesn't know, right? Like you
Mhm.
said, they're not mind readers. They have no idea what you're expecting, what your expectations are. And so the person doesn't get the flowers, or doesn't get the gift, or doesn't get that apology, and now there's bitterness and anger and resentment, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't get what they really needed. So that's where you're expecting them not to get you something, and then you don't get it. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You
Mm-hmm.
kind of led to your own, lack of what you really
Frustration.
needed. Yeah, and frustration. So it's being vulnerable enough to request what we need, with
Mm-hmm.
our spouses and even the children. Sometimes parents, they expect the children to show them love or to respect them or spend time with them. But kids, especially, like they're not going to really know. And so it's being able to communicate that to them. It's like, hey, I want to spend more time with you. Like, what can we do to spend time together? And then with
Mm-hmm.
the spouse, it was like, I'd really love to receive flowers every now and then. It'd be really nice. So this way that you're communicating it, and they know what you're expecting or what you would like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the end of the day, you are feeling frustrated when they don't meet your expectations, but
Yes.
they even don't know what are your expectations at the first place. So
Right.
it doesn't really make any sense. So if you are setting any expectations, you need to let other people know, hey, these are my expectations from you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One person said some people have a difficult time with active listening. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
let's mention active listening. That's an important topic too.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And it's not, sometimes, it's a skill that you've got to kind of practice, right? There's a lot of, when it comes to children as well as spouses, there's a lot of activities that you can look up online on, dialogues to practice active listening, because not everybody is good at it. And if you're really in a place of conflict, especially with your spouse, you're not at that place of active listening. You're
Mhm.
already so used to interrupting each other, cutting each other off, only focusing on your part of the conversation, right? Which a lot of people get stuck in. They get stuck on my part of the conversation. I want to say this, so you better listen. I'm going to cut you off. And so it really sometimes requires something as simple as finding an activity sheet online.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, therapy is the best thing, like working with a therapist to help you to build that skill of active listening with one another. But on your own, there's a lot of things that you can find online, especially now. There's so many free resources, but really like a conversation guide that teaches you active listening, where you say a statement and the other person reflects that back to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing that this is what you need. Is that correct? And so that's where it teaches you that active listening, where we don't usually communicate like that. It's like, it's just very, like one-sided.
Yeah, reflections are very important in active listening. Like for those who don't know, like reflect back what you are hearing. It's not that complicated, or it's not like, oh, this is a sophisticated technique, I don't know how to apply. It's really that simple. Like just reflect back what you are hearing. Like I hear you are saying blah blah. Did I understand you correctly? I
Mm-hmm.
hear you are telling me this. Like I don't want to jump to conclusion. I want to make sure that I understand you correctly. I want to make sure that we are on the same page. So
Yes.
just reflect back what you are hearing without adding any interpretation, without adding anything from yourself. Like, oh, so you are saying I'm not a good wife. Like, no, he is not saying you are not a good wife. He is saying, I need you to help me more in cooking, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the conclusion that we are taking from this conversation without reflecting back. So if he is saying that, you can only reflect back like, hey, I don't want to jump to conclusions, so are you saying that do I need to help you a little bit more in cooking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's basically it.
Yeah, and a lot of the fights actually occur because of that misinterpretation or the assumption that came about, right?
Hmm.
I'm just thinking of an example of a couple long ago, and I'll give a different example so it doesn't even relate. But it was like where, the wife looked in the fridge and she said, "Oh, we're missing eggs," and now we can relate to that a lot. But she's like, "We're
Yeah.
missing eggs. We don't have eggs." And the husband did grocery the other day, and so immediately he assumed in his mind that he did something wrong, that she's
Hmm.
complaining about him, that he didn't get the right grocery. And so it made him so upset, he kind of, you know, burst
Yeah.
out in anger. Okay, fine. I'm never going to do grocery again.
Hmm.
And so for her, she was like, what? Like the reaction was so confusing because she just meant, oh, like we're running out of eggs, just a simple statement about eggs. It wasn't attacking him and his character. But we all have that internal voice, right? That can often be negative and critical. So what he heard was, she's blaming me, she's attacking me. And so he reacted based on that assumption instead of saying, oh, what do you mean by what you're saying? Because I'm thinking something crazy in my head. So, what do you mean? And then she could clarify by saying, oh, I'm just saying, we're missing eggs. Maybe I can go to the grocery store tomorrow to get some. And then it would cool him down, calm him down, because he would know she wasn't attacking him.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's so
definitely
important.
easy to take personal, to take offense, and to jump to conclusion. It's easy, but we shouldn't do this. We should
Mhm.
stop, take
Yeah.
a deep breath, trying to figure out that we completely 100% understood the other person,
Mhm.
and then start continue the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wish everyone just check in with their assumptions
Yes.
all the
We
time.
would communicate better. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm. And I know a lot of families are looking for more strategies like beyond communication to kind of connect with their families at this time. So I was reading a book not recently, but a few months ago. It's The Secrets of Happy Families. And so I would definitely recommend it. I don't know if you've read that, but I would definitely recommend it for families at this time because it gives a lot of strategies and tips on, how to build those relationships within the family. And one of the ones that I was remembering was really just enjoying your time together. And even though that may seem simple, but it's really about just being present. And I think this whole situation is teaching us that even more, where we're not so focused on planning for the next week or anticipating what's going to happen next month, but it's teaching us to really be present where we are. And so being able to have fun and laugh and enjoy each other's company.
Mhm.
Um,
And when you say be present, like you mean quality time, right? Like, because we can spend 10 hours together, now we are at the same home, but like we are looking at our phones, we are listening the news,
yeah.
so we are not really present for each other. But if you're really present for each other, like having that quality time, undivided attention. Hi, sorry everyone, suddenly cut Instagram. I don't know what's happening, but we can definitely start it again. So it's not the problem on my phone, but I don't know why the Instagram suddenly cut it out. So I'm going to invite Saadia again. Sorry for this interruption. Again. Connecting?
Hello, we're back.
Hi. Yeah, we are back. This technology is sometimes just doing weird things.
I think Instagram cuts us off after a certain time period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where were we? Quality time,
Yeah.
right?
Quality time. Yep. And it's one of the five love languages, right? So
Mm-hmm.
something that's so important is like, how can we give more quality time to our family members? Yeah.
Do you want to mention the love languages?
Sure, yeah. So the five love languages, by Gary Chapman are quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, acts
Mm-hmm.
of service, and gifts. So everybody can take the quiz online. I think it's a great time now for